Most people don't go broke from one bad decision. They go broke paying for things they don't even remember buying. Forgotten subscriptions, fees they never questioned. Convenience charges that felt small until they weren't. If you've ever felt like you earn money, work hard, do everything right, yet somehow never get ahead, this isn't a discipline problem. It's a system problem. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. According to recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the median household income in the United States was about $83,030 in 2024, meaning that half of working households earn less than this amount, and most people still carry significant living expenses that eat into their cash flow. And if you've ever tried to save a fixed percentage, like trying to put away 10% to 20% of your income each month, only to end up cutting joyless expenses and still feeling like you have nothing left, you're not alone, because many workers organize their budgets around paycheck to paycheck living. For a long time, I thought cutting expenses meant cutting joy. No coffee, no eating out, no small pleasures, just a gray, boring life filled with guilt and self-control. And I tried that approach more than once, and every time it failed. I would save aggressively for a few weeks, sometimes a month, then completely fall apart. Because one stressful day or one exhausting week was enough to trigger binge spending, delivery food, impulse purchases. I deserve this spending, and I'd end up worse than before, with less money and more shame. I also used to think that if I didn't save painlessly by cutting joy, then in the event of a crisis like illness or job disruption, I'd have no buffer to rely on. And for years, I was stuck in that exhausting cycle of calculating which expense to trim so I could try to save 10, 15, or even 20% of what I earned each month, balancing that with rent, utilities, food, and emergency needs. At one point, I was saving about $300 a month, then blowing $600 in a single weekend. Not because I was irresponsible, but because I was exhausted. And that's when I realized something critical. The problem wasn't spending. The problem was spending without intention. When you cut expenses in a way that attacks your identity, comfort, and sense of normal life, your brain rebels. It sees saving as punishment, and punished brains don't cooperate. They sabotage. But when you cut expenses by redesigning your environment and upgrading your rules, something shifts. Saving stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like control. Today, I'll share 7 realistic ways to cut expenses without feeling poor. Methods that work even if you're busy, stressed, or living paycheck to paycheck. And by the end, you'll have at least one change you can apply immediately without hating your life. The first way is to cut invisible spending first, not joy spending, because the fastest way to save money without feeling poor is to stop cutting what you love and start cutting what you don't even notice, like unused subscriptions, bank fees, delivery markups, late penalties, convenience charges, and small daily leaks that feel harmless but quietly drain your future. And psychologically, this works because you get a financial win without triggering deprivation. Nothing in your lifestyle feels worse, but your cash flow improves. So make one simple rule. If you haven't used it in the last 30 days, cancel it today. Then schedule one monthly subscription audit, 10 minutes once a month, because most people find $50 to $200 instantly and feel richer without changing how they live. And if you don't miss it, you didn't need it. The second way is the same life. Lower cost rule. Because cutting expenses doesn't mean lowering your quality of life. It means paying less for the same outcome. So instead of asking, can I afford this? Train your brain to ask, how can I get the same result for less? Because that question preserves identity and dignity, whether it's cooking 2 meals at home and keeping 1 restaurant meal, switching grocery stores while buying the same foods, buying used items that depreciate, negotiating bills, or choosing experiences over status purchases. Your brain doesn't feel punished. It feels smart, and smart brains cooperate. So remember, same life, lower price. The third way is to build spending guardrails instead of strict budgets, because budgets fail for the same reason extreme diets fail. They're rigid, guilt-based, and easy to break. While financially stable people don't rely on willpower, they rely on guardrails. Simple boundaries like weekly eating out limits, impulse buy caps, a 24-hour rule for big purchases, and separate accounts for bills, savings, and fun. Because behavioral science calls this choice architecture, designing your environment so the default decision is the right one. And when your system is smart, willpower becomes optional. So systems always beat discipline. The fourth way is to win the big three without destroying your life. Because for most adults, housing, transportation, and food dominate spending, and you don't need extreme sacrifices. You need targeted moves, like negotiating rent, temporarily taking a roommate, downsizing one category instead of everything, refinancing your car, delaying upgrades, reducing delivery instead of never eating out, or meal prepping twice a week because high-impact changes beat daily suffering. And saving $400 on rent once is better than fighting $5 decisions every day. So one big win always beats daily misery. This is where most people fail, not because the strategies don't work, but because their identity feels threatened. Because when expenses drop, the brain whispers that you're falling behind, becoming cheap, or no longer successful. But this isn't a money problem. It's a psychological and social one, because society trains us to equate spending with success and restraint with failure. And if you don't consciously reject that belief, you'll sabotage your progress just to feel normal again. But the moment you realize that cutting expenses isn't losing status but reclaiming autonomy, everything changes. And this mental shift is where real financial independence actually begins. The fifth way is to stop status spending and start value spending. Because many people feel poor while saving since they're still spending to maintain an image. But status spending is endless because there's always someone richer, while value spending focuses on what actually improves your life, like health, skills, tools, time, and relationships. So before you buy, ask yourself whether you'd still want it if nobody could see it. Because if the answer is no, it's probably status spending, and cutting it doesn't make you poor. It makes you free, because status drains while value sustains. The sixth way is to automate saving so you don't feel it. Because if saving depends on daily decisions, you'll eventually stop, since decision fatigue is real. So automate savings the day after payday, even 1 to 5%. Automate bills to avoid fees. Automate sinking funds for travel, gifts, and repairs. Because automation turns saving into a default rather than a daily battle. And your brain adapts faster than you think. What once felt impossible quietly becomes normal. So make the right choice automatic. The seventh way is to replace retail therapy with a cheaper reward. Because many expenses aren't logical, they're emotional, driven by stress, boredom, insecurity, and fatigue. And if you cut spending without replacing the emotional reward, you'll relapse. So substitute with walks and music, home coffee rituals, exercise, low-cost social time, or a planned fun money budget. Because the principle is substitution, not deprivation. And this is how saving becomes a lifestyle rather than a punishment. So replace the reward, not the habit. These strategies work because they don't rely on motivation. They protect identity, reduce decision fatigue, avoid deprivation triggers, and then create systems that make good choices automatic. And people who save consistently aren't stronger. They're simply better designed. So you don't need to cut everything or live like you're broke. Just start with one change today. Cancel one invisible expense. Build one guardrail, or automate one small transfer. Because financial freedom doesn't start when you make more money. It starts the moment your money stops controlling your emotions. And when you cut expenses with intention, you won't feel poor. You'll feel calm, confident, and in control. And that feeling is the real foundation of financial freedom.